Well, it's Friday, and everybody knows when it's Friday, it's time to go Inside EMS. I am your host, Chris Cebollero. You might have been checking us out, listening to us on your favorite MP3, but don't forget the videos now that we're video recording. You could check us out on EMS1 Video on YouTube, and that's where you can see my pretty face and the person to my left, my good friend, Kelly Grayson, the one we call Kelly Grayson. Kelly, what's going on?
Oh, not much, man. Just living life, living the dream.
Yeah, man. I guess when you have a near-death experience, everything's pretty.
Yeah. It's the recovery and everything continues apace. Still taking my meds, still dealing with the aftermath. But thus far, no worries, no significant dyspnea on exertion. You know, every time I get a little twinge, I'm like, is that is it happening again? But thus far, you know, fingers crossed, so far so good. I'm working fine and not having any issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's cheers to you. I mean, when we do lifestyle changes, we really have to be able to put ourselves in a position to do something different, right? And I told somebody the other day, I'm like, you know, I'm a little bit overweight myself, right? So being heavy is hard, you know, not being successful is hard, but being in shape is hard, and being rich is hard. You just have to choose your hard. What hard do you want to have?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know,
let's just get off that line of thought for right now.
Why?
Before we earn an NC-17 rating.
Well, I'm just saying, really. So we have to be able to really.
You're right.
You know, life is hard, right? So, but the people who are rich,
as that noted philosopher Jimmy Dugan said in A League of Their Own, it's supposed to be hard. The hard is what makes it great.
Is he a philosopher? There's no crying in baseball.
Yeah, well, you know,
you pick all these old
there's
movies.
No crying in baseball. What better philosophy is there than that?
You got to pick some of these newer movies so the newer generation of EMS provider will understand. But you know, I'm glad you're on a good pace. I'm glad you're on a good path, and you're an inspiration. So, cheers to you.
Thank you, man.
So Kelly, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, you go ahead. No,
please.
No, after you, Gaston.
No, please, after you.
So in our daily correspondence, I hear that you are about to do a EMS commencement speech for a organization. Tell us about that.
You know, it's graduation season, right? I mean, everywhere you look, people are graduating from high school, people are graduating from college, and EMS is no different. You know, paramedic schools and EMT schools are doing their best to put out more EMS providers, and I am honored to give a commencement address to one of the EMT classes that are coming up. And, you know, one of the things is I sit and try to figure out how to guide the next generation of EMS provider. What are we going to talk about? How do you motivate them to start off? And maybe I'll just practice it here with you today and see what you think about it, you know? And so one of the things that I thought I'm going to start off about, I think it's really important that we teach the new providers that they don't know everything there is to know about EMS. So my first point to them is going to be, I'm going to have them close their eyes and say, if you know everything there is to know about EMS, raise your hand. And then I'm going to see how many hands go up, which we know that there should be 0, right? And then
I'm hands in the air like you just don't care.
That's right. Then I'm going to ask them to stand up. All right, everybody who raised their hand, stand up. Now, if anybody raises their hand, I've got a problem. And then I'm going to ask them to open their eyes and look around to see how many people have their hands up or how many people are standing. And then I want to be able to get to the point of saying that you don't know everything there is to know about EMS. So you need to be able to ask the question, why? One of the things that I've talked about for a lot of years, and I say this on the show, I must have said it 10 times, that EMS is a very egotistical business. But it's the egotism that
we train them to be.
That's right. But it's the egotism that keeps us from asking the question why, so we don't look like we don't know what we're talking about in front of our peers. But there's going to be why questions you don't know the answers to. And you've got to be able to understand and get to a point where you can just say, what does that mean? You know, And
Yeah.
I think that that's really important, because we have to be able to understand anytime we leave college, or anytime we leave high school, or anytime we leave paramedic school, or anytime we leave EMT school, the education isn't over. And
Yeah.
we have to be able to continue down the path of growing our knowledge as to what things mean. We hear things every day in our business, Kelly. We hear things that are from our hospital partners. We hear diagnosis. We hear lab tests. We hear x-ray talk. We hear, and how many times do we wonder what that means, but never go out and read the Merck manual, or get on
Yeah.
the answer box on our phone and figure out, what does it mean, a normal S1 and S2? Maybe you were taught it, but you didn't recall the information. And I think that that's
Yeah.
just a horrible place to be. I mean, and how do you deal with that, right? I mean, so as an instructor
Yeah.
of EMT courses and being an educator, there's got to be people who call you and say, "Hey, Kelly, what does this mean?" I mean, how do you give them the comfort and the confidence to say, this is what they got to do? This is how you got to continue to grow in your field.
Well, they have to trust that they have a good foundation, and that you cannot anticipate every eventuality in class, and that's what clinical practice, and that's what your clinical rotations are for, is to put some context to the lessons. I think EMT classes graduate, and I've said this forever, EMT classes graduate two kinds of people. The people that are terrorized and in fear of the responsibility that they have. And then there's the other kind, who are so damn cocky that they're God's gift to EMS, and they just can't wait to prove it, if someone would just have the common courtesy to die in front of them. And I was that second kind. But that's not an unusual kind. When you're 18 years old, you know everything anyway. You can probably think back to how smart you were when you were just graduating high school or college. And then you add the type A personalities that EMS tends to attract on top of that, and you wind up with a very cocky individual. And we train people to be decisive and be very decisive in their actions and their thoughts, and to try to think fast. What we don't often teach them, that has to come, the wisdom of EMS has to come with some years behind you, and you have to develop some introspection. I think the best way we could prepare our students when they graduate for that, understanding that they don't know everything and there's still a great deal to learn, is give them a good foundation, and teach them that they can learn even from their mistakes.
Yeah, that's important.
And teach them the value of a teachable moment. And if they have the good foundation, then they can learn the proper lessons from those mistakes, and adapt and modify their practice as they go on, rather than become one of those people with 25 years of experience, or 1 year experience repeated 25 times.
So one of the things that you got to think about is, when we think about this, of continue your learning process, whether you're an EMT or whether you're a paramedic, whether you're new or whether you've been a tenured paramedic, here's what I want to challenge you to do. I want you to go ahead and write out all the skills that you have and the knowledge that you need to have for being an EMT and paramedic. And it's easy. I mean, for a paramedic, you talk about medical calls, you talk about trauma calls, you talk about pediatric, cardiology, respiratory, and those types of things. And then what I want you to do, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to write out 1 to 10 on that line of paper. And I want you to circle where your knowledge is. Number 10 is going to be skill mastery. So if you circle number 10 for cardiology, in your realm, in your scope, if you're 10, that's awesome. Go to the next one. If pediatrics is a 4, you've got to be able to grow that skill. And one of the things that I want to line that up with is what I want to talk about next. But for an EMT, it's the same, trauma assessment, medical assessment, and all the things that you need to know. Put yourself on a path of scale of 1 to 10 and circle where your knowledge is right now. And what are you going to do to grow yourself to the next level? Which comes to my next point. My next point is to continue to develop professionally. One of the things that we need to be able to understand is that our career field is needing us to deliver the highest quality of patient care that we can. And what is your responsibility to do that? Now, I want to touch on this because this is something that I'm going to bring up in my address as well. Is EMS a career field or is EMS a stepping stone? We've been talking about that for a lot of years.
Debate we've had multiple times, yeah.
And I've got to tell you, in my career, it's a stepping stone. The people like you and I, Kelly, and the Chris Calls and the Dan Limmers, and I mean, we've made EMS a career, but people are using it to get to the fire department. People are using it to get to medical school. People are using it to get to nursing. And that's great. But don't waste your time while you're here. Be the best employee that you're here, which will go to my third point when we get to that. But that has to start with professional development. It has to start with your ability to say, are you the best at delivering the skills and the knowledge and the abilities that you have right now to bring yourself to the next level of your success? And we get very, very complacent that we're running the dialysis call again, and we're running the transfer again. And, we're going to the call at 3:00 in the morning. You know what? Don't whine about those things. That's what you've been tasked to do when you took this job. Coming into EMS, we knew that we were going to have to do transfers, and we knew that we were going to have to do dialysis calls, and we knew that we were going to see the frequent flyer all the time. And what are we upset about? That exactly what we know was going to happen is happening? And we've got to be able to understand that. But your professional development is important. And one of the things that I would ask my employees all the time is, I never hired the workforce as a chief. And I let the training occur, but I got to speak to all the people before they went into the field. So I wanted to give them my philosophy and my expectation before they started to treat patients. But one of the things that I would tell them about is, how do you continually grow yourself to develop your skills? I would ask my, people, what are your goals? Well, I think in 5 years, I want to be a supervisor. Okay, why are you waiting 5 years? And I'd say the same thing. I want to grow my clinical skills. I want to get my knowledge up. I want to gain my experience. I said, well, what are you doing to be a supervisor? Are you just going to wake up in 5 years and say, okay, I'm ready to be a supervisor? And then now you've got to gain the skill for leadership and communication and conflict resolution. It's going to take you another 2 years before you're able to be a supervisor. Or now you just wake up after 5 years and you're ready to step into the gold badge and the white shirt kind of thing. So don't waste your time. If you know your goal is that you want to be in a leadership role in 3 to 5 years, learn the skills you need to learn now, that when that experience happens and when that time happens, you're ready to start the interview. But, Kelly, we've got to be able now to focus on what our vision is in our career, in what we want for our professional development. Where do you see yourself in 3 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And develop the goals you need to reach that vision.
Yeah. And then the admonition I continually give new students is, as far as professional development, developing their clinical skills and whatnot, the attitude is most important. And I tell people, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love that.
In other words, you have to challenge yourself. You have to reach. I get this all the time when I do continuing education. I get the, why do we have to know this stuff? I'm an EMT. Why do I have to know this? Oh yeah, God, it's endemic in EMS. Hopefully it's not endemic in my students, but I run into it all the time. I'm an EMT. Why do I have to know this? So you know when a paramedic is full of crap or not. So you're a better set of hands when you're assisting a paramedic. So you could be a paramedic yourself one day. Paramedic, do you think you know everything there is to know in this profession? You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that means you have to challenge yourself and you have to reach. And that, if you approach your professional development as a means to grow yourself, as you pointed out, rather than just a chore to get through every 2 years, and rehash information, 50% of which was wrong in the first place when you learned it, you're not going to move anywhere. So get comfortable being uncomfortable, and pretty soon you're going to be amazed at what situations you're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I love that. And
So, yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
So what's your next nugget of wisdom you're going to bestow on these guys?
So number 3, and it's only going to be a 30-minute speech, so it's nothing that's going to be too long. And I may even need to knock it down.
How could you do anything in 30 minutes or less?
What does that mean? You don't think I could?
Because you're Mr. Bombast, you know?
Oh, I see.
Oh, you probably could. Yeah.
But number 3 is develop your professional reputation every day. And you've got to earn that every day. And one of the things that we see, Kelly, is when people come into the field or they come into a new organization, they start off with the best of intention, and then it seems that they start to get into the toxicity, or they seem to change their focus of who they are as professionals. And I've said this on this show countless times, that you don't let anybody else dictate your professionalism. You have to be able to develop your reputation as a professional every single day. You wear your uniform with pride. You make sure that it's ironed. If you want to starch it, starch it. You know, you need to make sure that you get to work early. If you need to, you stay late. And you do the best job that you can. You don't let anybody else dictate your professionalism, because again, if you're using EMS as a stepping stone, I want to give you this as a thought. So when you leave me, Kelly Grayson, to go to a fire department, who's the fire chief going to call for a recommendation? They're going to call me, the chief of the department. And if you're somebody who comes in late, if you're somebody that doesn't take care of your ambulance, if you're someone that doesn't take care of your equipment, if you're somebody that has a bad attitude, what kind of recommendation am I going to give you to that fire chief? So one of the things that you've got to be able to do is every day you're developing your professional reputation, and you've got to be able to earn that on a regular basis. And I think it's something that we forget, because we allow the humdrum and the ho-hum of the complacency and the transfers and the dialysis and the 3 o'clock calls and the poor leadership to dictate how we act in our career, in that organization. And then we're supposed to think that when you go to a fire department or medical school or nursing school that you're going to be different. You're not going to be different, because you've now trained yourself, and you've trained your subconscious mind to say, when I'm come up against this stuff, that this is the behavior I want. I think this is it's a trap, and we need to be able to ensure that we are setting the standards for others to follow. There is no position in an organization that is beneath you, right? So your job is just as important as everybody else's job, and you set the standards for others to follow. You allow yourself to be the professional. You allow yourself to be dedicated. You have commitment. You have professionalism, and you never sell yourself out because somebody else isn't giving you what you think you deserve. You be the leader for the people who are around you, and not worry about that. And I think that that's something that I'll hit as my third point, is grow your professional reputation every day.
Yeah, and the thing that people forget is how difficult that can be. It requires rigor and discipline and self-awareness. Developing your professional reputation is the concept is simple. If you want to be an example, be exemplary. That's the best way to be a good example. Be exemplary. But can you be exemplary every single day? None of us are immune to burnout and fatigue and complacency and that sort of thing. And myself included, I've seen in myself where, you've got a little work fatigue going on. You're tired, and you're creeping up on burnout, and that guy that you used to champion and mentor, now you're just like, he's only going to be here 24 hours. I'm in the passenger seat and sleep and tell him what to do when we get on calls. And that's not the way I operate. but I've caught myself doing it a time or two. And when you sat in yourself, have the self-awareness to realize that you need to find some source of rejuvenation, come back with some renewed commitment to developing that professional reputation, and being the EMT or paramedic that you want to be. Because I don't care how many entries there are on your resume or your CV and how many postnomials you have after your name, it doesn't match the street cred that you earned among your peers and your supervisors and the hospital staff. If you want to know the best paramedics in a system, all you got to do is ask the triage nurses and the nurses at the hospital who they trust and who they don't. And they'll tell you that they have a reputation. You develop a reputation, whether it's communicated to you or not. And the people that you continually work with are the people that spread that reputation. Only one way to develop it and keep it high is to be rigorous, be disciplined, and try to be as exemplary as you can, as often as you can.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that's the speech, man.
Any other nuggets of wisdom?
No. I think that's a good
keeping it short, sweet, and to the point. Three good points, 3 things to grow your career with. Man, it sounds like the perfect commencement speech. Yeah,
number
go
one
ahead.
Is to know that you don't know everything there is to know about EMS, and continually grow. 2, you want to be able to develop a plan for your professional development and continue. I'm 58 years old, and I still am growing in my knowledge, my skills, and my ability as a professional in EMS, in leadership. Number 3, develop your professional reputation and don't let anybody dictate your professionalism to you. But that's going to be my talk. That's going to be what I'm going to give them.
There
and
you
we'll
go.
see how it works out.
Those are 3 principles to guide your career by, and I hope they take that lesson to heart. It's going to be a good commencement speech. I wish I was there to hear it and hear the dynamic Chris Cebollero delivery.
I'll tape it for you.
You're so famous for.
I'll tape it for
tape
you.
it for me. Yeah. Hey, it's a commencement speech, because the perfect welcoming speech to EMT class has already been written and delivered multiple times by, I don't know, somebody.
Somebody on this podcast.
But yeah, somebody on this podcast that's much better looking than you. But hey, you've heard what we think. We'd like to hear what you think. What professional advice would you give to the new EMT graduate? What mentoring advice would you give for someone just starting out on their EMS journey? We'd like to hear those thoughts at the show at ems1.com. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, catch the video on YouTube. And for myself and co-host Chris Cebollero, an EMS Yoda, if there ever was one, thanks for tuning in to Inside EMS. Catch you next week, we will.